Hi there. This video is going to tell you how to get a build sheet for a variety of Chrysler vehicles. I'm going to orient it toward the Jeep Cherokee XJ because there's a lot you can learn from these. But this is applicable to a wide variety of basically about 1991 and newer Chrysler branded vehicles. I believe it works for Eagle vehicles as well if you happen to find one of those. So the first thing you do is you go to this URL, which I will drop in the comments section or in the description section below. But this is it right here, and you paste the VIN. So in this case, I found the VIN of a high option, I should say, 2001 Jeep Cherokee Limited that was on Bring a Trailer recently. So I just pulled the VIN over here. You can even see where I pasted it. So once you do that, once you paste it in there, it pulls up this. Which is a PDF. You can download this, you can print this, do whatever you want with it. Now, the important thing to note here is that on an older vehicle like this 2001 Cherokee, each one of these little dots or stars here refers to, or is populated, I should say, by an option code. And these option codes, they're not easy, they're not something you can just find on the vehicle. You might be able to find it on a build sheet that happened to have been left in the glove box, or in some cases was hidden behind one of the door panels on a vehicle from the factory in this case in Toledo, Ohio. But for the most part, these are pretty hard to get. And from my understanding, Chrysler has reused a lot of these over the years. So especially with an older vehicle, and maybe in a minute I'll pull up an older one, but especially with an older vehicle, a lot of which you'll read here just doesn't compute because they've reused a code. Like sometimes you'll find an Alcantara steering wheel, which is like that synthetic suede, which was not an option on these originally. Or you'll find 20-inch wheels because they've reused that from a Dodge Challenger or something like that. Anyway, with that in mind, here we go. It identifies, gives you the VIN, identifies exactly what this vehicle was. This one's confusing because in 2001, they merged the Classic and the Limited into a single trim level. So although this vehicle here, go away. This vehicle here, I don't know if this one has a window sticker. Yeah, it does not have a window sticker. But this one says Limited on it, has leather seats, but because they merged the Limited and Classic into a single trim for the last half of 2001 production, this one shows as a Classic. But typically it'll say Classic, Sport, Country, SE, whatever your trim level was. That said, things like the Freedom Edition was based on the Sport. So I don't believe that they say Freedom. I believe it's listed in here. Anyway, this gives you a fair amount of information. A lot of this is repeated in here, and a lot of it is kind of going to apply to every single one of these. Monotone paint, for instance. I'm not going to go option by option here, but monotone paint they're all monotone. They were not two tones at this point. Some of the earlier ones were, so sometimes you'll find something there. But anyway, as you go through it here, you're looking for optional equipment. And again, I found this 2001 Limited on Bring a Trailer is an extremely high option vehicle. I think it's got almost everything. It does not have the Select Track transfer case, but that's about it. And you can, if you find a brochure from 2001, you can kind of use this to compare back and forth and figure out, what the vehicle was originally built with. But let's see here. As far as the options, we get into the first section is not terribly useful, but we see here that this one has Command Track. That's useful information. That's the part-time system. If it had the optional Select Track, it would say that. They all had a Dana 30 axle, not a big deal, but you can learn about the rear axle ratio. You can learn about the Dana 35 rear axle. This one is a late production, and I think we'll learn in a second that this one has anti-lock brakes. So any of them late production with anti-lock brakes had a Dana 35, and also any of them any of them the last, 2-3 months, something like that, they all had Dana 35s regardless. But anyway, here we've got every one of them had tinted windshield and tinted front door glass. Tinting is sort of that light greenish tint. You really can't tell. This one was, all right, here's another thing that's kind of useful. This Route 43 Benicia, California. Benicia, I don't know how you say that, but this is, from my understanding, was basically the rail depot where it was shipped to. And from there, it was distributed to the dealer that received it originally. But this is interesting. We'll get back to location later. The rest of this, here's one that, whatever this is, CJPKA classes, is probably a reused something or other. Again, a lot of this is not very useful, but here we get into the paint colors: steel blue paint color molding, steel blue fender flares. So now we know we've got color matched molding and color matched fender flares. Body side molding is what runs along the doors. Fender flares are pretty self-explanatory. Body color bumper end caps. All useful information here. We get through here, body color license plate brown. We've got the badging. Now here it's a classic with a limited badge. Again, this is a late production, so this is what they did. You can also find out information about the, and there will be more on this in a second, on the emissions equipment that it was built with. For some years, they built two different setups: a California emissions, which was California, Oregon, Washington, and some of the northeastern states. I think basically from Maryland north, including, I think, Pennsylvania, all had that emissions equipment. And then in 2001, they all had it, regardless. All right. Here, this is where it starts to get particularly interesting. So this, I think that's about the fifth time I've said that, but front stabilizer bar. Perfect. They all had that. Normally, if it had the standard suspension, it would say under here, rear stabilizer bar. This is an upcountry Jeep, so it only has the front stabilizer bar, but we'll learn more about that in a second. These are the tires it came with. They're not always this descriptive, but they did come with black sidewall Goodyear Wrangler HPs. These are the Icon silver wheels as opposed to the Icon, what do they call the dark gray? I can't remember what they called it. They had a different word for that. All right, built to U.S. market specs, not very surprising. All right, U.S. dealer retail. This is how we know this one was sent to a dealer. Some of them were, a lot of these, especially toward the end, regardless of trim level, were rental cars or were fleet vehicles. So, but this one as a dealer retail means that this car went to a dealer. Zone 73, there were, I don't know how many zones. I don't know if there were 73, but at some point, the San Francisco zone received this. So this would have been, this is just a guess, but dealers from maybe like Monterey up through probably the Oregon border were probably all San Francisco vehicles, maybe even Sacramento. I don't know. But this tells you that this was originally sold in the San Francisco, generally speaking, area. I don't think this one is useful. I don't think that means anything. We've got a California shipped to state code and California sold to. So these sometimes will be two different states. And in this, from my understanding, this would be for a rental car, for instance. Let's say that, what is it? I think Enterprise is the company that owns it, or maybe Thrifty is in Oklahoma City. So it would be an Oklahoma sold to, but if that rental car was shipped to the airport in San Diego, it would be a California shipped to, or, if that's where it was originally intended to go. So this is important information if you really want to know your car's history, and if you want to know that at least it started its life somewhere where rust is not a big worry. If this said Michigan shipped to and Michigan sold to, different story. We've got the leather seats on this. Limited value group 2 on these late ones was the leather upholstery. Was basically what that means. They pretty much all had the light group, that's interior lights. Skid plate group, this could on some of them be ordered separately early on, and some of the fleet vehicles will just have that. Trailer tow, this is the hitch and the wiring. Leather interior, again, this is going back to this value group, they're kind of one and the same. Again, this sort of varies. So some of this is useful, some of it's not. Here's a good one, upcountry suspension. This is the slightly higher riding, plus the gas charge shocks, the skid plates, the limited slip rear end, tow hooks, and some of them had a badge, not all of them. Smokers group, this one had the cigarette lighter and the ashtray, not a big deal at this point. Here we see this one has the relatively rare anti-lock brakes. Overhead console, that was another option. I just skipped over the cargo compartment cover, super rare. This one, I believe this one actually still had that. No, I lied. It does not. That's where it hooked on, but it does not have that anymore. Overhead console was an option. It's funny they put in stuff like lockup torque converter. Well, if it had an automatic, it had that. I don't know what push to pass means, but a lot of them seem to say that. Track lock differential, that's your limited slip. Deep tint, so this is where we get into the dark tint glass. If it did not have factory tint, it just says tinted glass. I forget exactly what it says, but it does not say the word deep. Power heated mirrors. They weren't all heated. It's relatively unusual. Sentry key, that was another one. That's the gray, thicker key. There's a little chip in the key and a little transponder or receiver, or I don't know what the term is, in the instrument cluster. You can work around that, but they had that originally. The wood grain bezel, that was with leather on these. Heated front seats. Could in some of them could be independent of leather, but I believe the late ones, if it had leather, it had heated. But I'm going to check myself on that. It doesn't quite sound right. Fog lamps, those were another option. Some of this I don't know what it means, like new limited tracking. But we do know 50 state emissions, low emission vehicle. So this was the year that in 2001, all of them, whoops, they've added that to Mac OS. I don't know why. Anyway, the 50 state emissions and low emissions vehicle, all of the 2001s had the same emissions equipment, but 2000 they did not. Some of this, like the oil cooler and the heavy duty engine cooling, were both part of the upcountry and the trailer tow packages. It came with both. I don't think you, actually, I think you got a slightly discounted price on upcountry if you already had the trailer hitch, or vice versa. Speed control, that's their word for cruise control. So here is where you can see the actual exterior paint color, which of course is steel blue. We know, from earlier on that the bumpers and other trim were blue, so of course it matches. But this one had the CD player and 6 speakers, means the Infinity audio system. So this one has that. Heavy duty suspension with gas shocks, again that's part of upcountry. Some of the fleet vehicles do have elements of upcountry, but not the whole thing. So some of them will have a heavy duty suspension with gas shocks, but for whatever reason they don't have tow hooks. You see this typically with an SE, a very low option one. Delete rear stabilizer bar, again that was part of upcountry. Tilt column, full-size spare, again part of upcountry. Tow hooks, these skid plate shields, those are the skid plates, of course. Here's the trailer towing equipment. I've grouped all that together. Amazingly, they gave you all 4 springs, and at one point there were 8 gallons of gas in there. Here's a really good example of where they've reused a bunch of codes. Basically, all of this, with the exception of leather group and limited value group and maybe this build out tracking. The rest of this is just stuff they've used. I mean, there's no 18-inch steel wheels in this, so they've reused whatever code was here once upon a time. Let's do one more. I'll just show you the difference really quick. Let's find an earlier one, actually. I don't know why I pulled this one up. View all listings. Sorry to make you wait here. And I'll just show you, here's a 93. Show you some of what you can find in an earlier one. So again, I'm going to grab that VIN and I'm going to just paste it to this last part. There we go. So this one, just to go back to it, this is actually a very nice 93 country. I think this is actually a rear wheel drive one, interestingly enough. But really nice truck, 57,000 miles. I don't really see any modifications, so would be relatively easy to compare. Oh, this one actually has a window sticker. So you wouldn't necessarily need to do it for this one, but so it's the same. It's 4 pages. I think the other was 5, but either way, this one just says Jeep Cherokee. Doesn't give you the trim data up here. I think it's somewhere in this. But here we know if it lists the brakes out at the beginning, then it does not have anti-lock brakes, which this one we can tell by looking underneath. There's no ABS booster there. We've got the Chrysler 8 1/4 or 8.25 rear axle on this one, because again, it did not have ABS. It was relatively standardized by 1993. But yeah, we've got some basic info here. Let's see if there's anything particularly interesting in this one. Federal emissions, so it's whatever the system would have been back in 1993. We've got a compact spare on this one. You can see that. And this one, they combined the stabilizer bars into a single listing. So this one was another dealer retail. It was sent to Portland, presumably Oregon. I think it even said that. I think this is all pretty. So here we've got the country decor group. So we know it's a country. And it's got the 2-tone paint. Yeah, I'm not gonna go too detailed on this, but as you can see here, there's probably a little bit less information on these. Hunter green metallic. Is that the actual color they called them back then? Yeah, they did call it hunter green. Yeah, it's actually a fair amount of information on this one. But yeah, you can see. So this is confusing because it's got 16-inch, it says tires, but 15-inch wheels. Well, 15s are correct. They've just reused a code here at some point. And then kind of limited info down here. You can learn, I think that these packages are the correct. We'll take a look. 2TH and 26H. We'll see if those are what's actually on the window sticker. I'll do this the easy way and view the actual window sticker. See if it lists that code. Yeah, there you go. 26H. So that was the country package back then, which was $1,399, but with a $575 discount. This is why I make things simple. And then I'm going to just show you really quick how this differs on an older vehicle. Like, let's just type in Jeep Grand Wagoneer. And this will show you, because these are, I believe, the 91s. Oh, here's one. Oh, that's pretty. I believe that these show up. If not, then I'm going to waste another 20 seconds of your day. Yeah, so this one will show up. But here's where you start to really get into information that's just going to be incorrect. This all looks pretty good to start, but these do not have an 8-speed automatic. They do have a rear axle. It's good to know, but it doesn't tell you any useful information. They did have keyless entry, so that might be accurate. Let's see, what else here? This is all fairly accurate. A Mopar full hood, black red stripe? No. Yeah, I'm just kind of skimming. They didn't have Echo alloy wheels. Who knows if this information about the location is correct here. Where else? This actually is a little more detailed than I remember these being, but yeah, this is actually surprisingly useful, but I don't think it even shows you. Did it say the name of the paint? Let's type in red and see what comes up. No. So it doesn't even tell you the name of the paint color on this, because I think this was just, I think they just called these red. Well, also may have been repainted at some point because this is a Wagon Master truck, so who knows. But yeah, and then the other one I'm going to do, I'll see if I can find, as long as you're still here. Oops, didn't spell that right. And Jeep Cherokee. I think I could spell these by now. I'm going to see if I can find a fleet, a vehicle that was definitely in a fleet, because I know they're, yeah, this one here, which they tend to be a little bit different as well. This one, I'm pretty sure I looked at it the other day. I'll zoom down really quick and we'll see if it tells us anything different. Yeah, okay, so start at the top here. It's a 96 two-door. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but we'll look for the, not the equipment information on this one. We're going to look for the shipping. So this is a federal government bid. Zone 11 Chrysler Corporation consignment, Washington State Code, Michigan State Code. So I honestly don't know what a lot of this means. Certainly it was a U.S. government vehicle at one point. You know, once you get into this, that you get some weird options, particularly federal government. They pretty much all have ABS. A lot of them have skid plates, and that's about it. Somebody convinced them that they needed ABS on everything, which, you know, can't blame them. But this one actually is a track lock. That's kind of interesting. But let's see here. It's interesting how some of these older ones, they go to the lowercase. Let's see here. I want to get to warranty, registration card, government build, government shippable vehicle. So shipped with a manufacturer's statement of origin, which is kind of interesting because I guess the government didn't technically title some vehicles, but I don't really know how that works. Government new vehicle service. Domestic government bid units is all government stuff. I don't really know what a lot of that means. But yeah, fleet option editor, fleet sales order, special order. So that's an interesting note. I have put into this vehicles that were clearly a special order because they set it on the window sticker and they don't show up as anything. So that might have just been a reused one. The other one I want to see is if I might be able to find one of these that I know was used as a rental. It's just easy on Bring a Trailer to find some of this stuff. There was, what did I just look at the other day? Was it this? There was something very recently. Maybe it was this. Pretty sure it was a WJ or a ZJ within the last few weeks. I apologize for this. Maybe I'll cut this part out. Maybe I won't. I think it's this one, this is a weird one. Yeah, it's this one. It's kind of a cool spec. Not what you'd expect for a rental. Just so you know, it's a uh, Grand Cherokee Laredo V8. So it's a WJ, um, but it's a V8, which most of the rentals were not, a V8 by any means. It's got tow hooks sticking out of the front, so it might have had the upcountry. I can't remember. But let's go see. And this one, if you look at the Carfax, I think it tells you at one point. So it's a Canadian spec vehicle. And if I remember correctly, this one started as a rental. But let's see here. If I'm wrong, I'll go find another one. There you go. Canada Fleet Lease. Built to Canadian market specs. Canada spec label. British Columbia province code. A kind of really odd option for what it is, but for a fleet vehicle. Sold vehicle, there you go. Fleet, why do I remember these things? Fleet daily rental sale, fleet option editor, CLC lease car, national rent a car. So somehow National Rent a Car ended up with a very unusually spec'd Grand Cherokee Laredo in 2002 in British Columbia, but whatever, that happened somehow. And then it was in Idaho. But anyway, that just shows you some of the other things you can find. So again, I hope this video was informative on these equipment listing build sheets. They are applicable to a huge number of Chrysler vehicles. Unfortunately, this early 2000s, late mid-90s stuff, you can't get a window sticker for these cars. They don't have an easy way to get one reproduced. You can for much later, I'm going to say within the 2010s vehicles, but that would be a separate video. Anyway, if this was useful, please let me know. Thanks again for watching, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe.